good morning to Amsterdam. I would have loved to be there, but it was unfortunately not possible this time. But I'm very much looking forward to meet all of you then probably in Copenhagen for the Wind Europe event. So this presentation is on global collaboration. I've really enjoyed the presentation on Tuesday morning from EERA headquarters, giving the motivation why we do all this wind energy research. That was really exciting to listen to all the arguments. So I don't need to make a pitch why we need wind energy and to collaborate on that. And this one is rather explaining a bit what is IEA Wind, how it works, where might be differences, because it is a unique structure, but it's not always self-explanatory how it works. So let's dive in there. The IEA Wind Technology Collaboration Program, as it is called now, the TCPs, you might know them. They have been like implementing agreement and long title, all formal stuff. So Paris decided to shorten that by a fancy acronym TCP. And there's several TCPs, and there's also one for wind. The vision we have is that really wind energy is leading the global transition to decarbonized energy supply worldwide. And the mission, how we want to do that, is by promoting high impact wind energy research and communication through international collaboration. And this last part, this international collaboration, this is really at the heart of IEA Wind, and this is what is driving us. The main difference, probably when you compare the different research structures that are out there for wind, like EERA JP Wind, like the European Academy, like the North American Wind Energy Academy, and then IEA Wind, or if you compare the TCP with EERA in general, is that it's not the research institutes and the scientists that are members, but the governments. It really is the sponsor organizations, so the ministries of energies or the funding agencies behind that are steering this consortium and really are the backbone. And this is probably also the reason why it has a slightly different approach and gives the possibility to contact and to reach information that is very much unique. You see, we're at the moment 23 members and two sponsor organizations. The two sponsor organizations are the Chinese Wind Energy Association and Wind Europe as the European Wind Energy Association. So really, if you look which markets these two industry associations are covering, that's obviously a very large share of the cake of the global wind energy market. Then from the Americas, it's Canada, US, and Mexico, Asian countries, India, Japan, and South Korea. And then, as we all know, a lot of activities in wind energy started in Europe and are still going on in Europe. And that is why there are also many members from European countries, and also including the European Commission as a member. In total, if you look at the amount of wind capacity installed in 2020, 85% is based in these IEA wind countries. So it really is a great forum to share information and knowledge and help to define way and to help developing countries or countries that want to get involved into wind energy to deploy them with good experiences, best practices, and really accelerating the deployment of that technology. Our strategic objectives in IEA Wind are to maximize the value of wind energy and energy systems and markets. And here's the focus really on the value, a bit moving away from only looking at costs, which has been the argument in the past, as we all know, but it's not only the cost, it's adding a lot of value in employment for the environment and stimulating new markets and activities. So it's better to use value than cost. Although lowering the cost, of course, is still an important objective, because that is actually what people have to pay. So we cannot completely neglect it. So it still will be a main driver. Then we want to facilitate wind energy deployment through social support and environmental compatibility, because it is now with this large deployment of the technology, it has to be working fine with the environment, and it needs the social support. And I really like the formulation in the E2 Wind report, this happy the coexistence is probably a very good definition of what we all want to achieve, that everybody is really enjoying that technology installed in the world. And then, as said earlier, this collaborative research approach that we together work on these topics and challenges and exchange best practices and data to really help each other to install as much as possible, as quick as possible. The research priorities are grouped in 5 categories. This is really starting with the wind, of course, itself as a fuel for that technology, in resource and site characterization. We have advanced technologies where it's more about the turbine or substructures, balance of plant, everything we need really to further develop this technology to get to bigger and better machines. Energy systems with high amounts of wind obviously is a topic that needs to be addressed when we transfer the energy system entirely into a complete or a very renewable version of it. And then social, environmental, and economic impact, but also communication, education, and engagement. We do good things, and we have to talk about that, and we have to find out the best way to do that, because most of us are more technical people, and that's not always a skill that's completely compatible with easy communication and giving messages to non-technical people. So that's good to also have something on that and really work on best practices there as well. And I think there's also a need that we learn from each other, what really works, what are good arguments, how to sell them and provide them to the public. The setup of the TCP itself is like this. It looks not so very different from the structure within EERA JP Wind, I would say. We have the executive committee, which is really the decision-making body. This is where all the country representatives are sitting and voting on business and research undertaken by the TCP. It's represented by the chair or the vice chairs at the RUP, which is a Renewable Energy Working Party. This is a forum level above the TCP, so to say, where for the renewable energy technologies, the strategy is laid out. We meet twice a year, usually in-person meetings. Obviously, that has not happened for the last month, but it really is a nice exercise that all these people globally meet, and you have this, as during the EERA of JP Wind annual event, this informal chats in between, and then you really can listen and learn what's going on in other countries, things you not usually read in reports or see in official documents. So it really is a great forum to share knowledge. To make that really work, we have decided to have a structure which is then helped by the leadership team, which is the chair, the vice chairs, the secretariat, and the operating agent of Task 11. So what's called substructures in EERA JP Wind is called a task in IEA Wind, and a sub-program coordinator is operating agent in our language. If you want to reach out to this leadership team, which is really doing the main work of keeping everything running, these are the people involved in the leadership team at the moment. Next to me as chair, it's Jamal Rem from the US Department of Energy, Ignacio Cruz from CIMAT in Spain, Jose Manuel Franco in Mexico, Francisca Klein from PTJ in Germany, John McCann from Ireland, and Brian Smith from NREL in the US. Then I guess Ignacio is in the room as the secretariat of the wind TCP, and Ellie is the new operating agent of Task 11, and I come to that task in a minute. And she's based at Planair in Switzerland. You can already tell by some names that are involved also in EERA JP Wind. So there is already overlap in person between IEA Wind and EERA JP Wind. Then the content is structured by these 5 research priorities that I mentioned before, and each is led by a member of the leadership team. And then in these different so-called sub-programs, or so to say sub-programs in new language, are the members from the ExCo and also the operating agents from the dedicated tasks that are connected or that are based on their content, sorted into these research committees. This is the current task portfolio we have. You see how that developed over time for roughly the last 10 years. Obviously, most of the tasks are based in the advanced technology area, and the rest is more or less at the same level. So this is really where the focus is on the technology. And the most recent tasks that just started are on farm flow control, leading edge erosion, aerodynamics, airborne wind energy, integrated design of floating wind arrays, hybrid power plants, because with this new and shiny hydrogen activities that are popping up everywhere, I guess, we are also looking into that, but not only into hydrogen, but also combination, obviously, with PV, hydropower, ocean energy, and other renewable energy fields. And then recycling of wind turbine blades, obviously, is also a very important topic the entire sector has to address now. How that works, how we come to the ideas of new tasks and what are topics for that is very much driven by the Wind Scout. This is the task 11. Don't bother by that number. This is by random, it's task 11, and that has been there from the very beginning. It's a special task. It really is running continuously. Usually a task now is only allowed to be extended one time. It can have 2 4-year periods, but this one is running really for the entire time. And that's a task that is organizing the topical expert meetings. Probably most of you have been attending already in the past. These topical expert meetings are like workshops and small conferences, and it's not like that every person that is interested can show up. It really is by the ExCo members or by the country representatives to propose names and say, these are the experts in our country on that topic. There's interest. We would send them, or we would inform them to participate in these TAMs. The idea is to have a balanced representation of countries, knowledge, and academia and industry during these TAMs. We have organized more than 100 of those since 1978, so from the beginning. Usually it's 4 times a year. Due to COVID, that has been a bit complex. So for the last period, we had 5 in-person meetings and 5 online meetings from 19 to 2020. And in total, that gathered 430 experts from 200 organizations. So you can tell it really is a good representation of our industry and sector being present at these expert meetings. The last topics that have been driving the TAMs are erosion of wind turbine blades, floating offshore wind arrays, aviation system cohabitation, hybrid power plants, and airborne wind energy. Of these 5, 4 have been developed into a task, and that is what happens, that are ideas that are discussed during TAMs, and then if the community says, okay, there's a need that we have to work on that topic, we will develop a proposal for a new task, present that to the ExCo, and if that is granted, then the community can keep on working on that topic with the support of the member countries. But it's not by definition that every TAM will lead to a new task. And the aviation system computation is an example for that. There was a need to have an exchange on the issues, but it did not lead to a task because the information exchange was already enough. And it's not that the research work going on, therefore, in a global connected way has been seen to be necessary, at least at this stage. To give some examples about how topics are selected, I picked those two, both airborne wind and floating, as advances, as an advanced technology or something new. And very much like the stamp in the Netherlands. I'm a bit jealous we don't have that. And it's not that I send a lot of paper letters anymore, but if I would love to use these kind of stamps. That's a very nice idea. So that obviously the airborne wind energy community has been around for some time now. The first ideas and steps are going back several years. Same goes for floating. But it's only now that we start with a task, with a dedicated task in the IEA Wind. And the reason is that any topic that is brought up to become a task has to be supported by several member countries, at least two, but this is really the absolutely lowest level. And it needs some critical mass also to see there are enough activities, because it's usually 3, 4, 5 countries at least joining for creating a task. And then in those countries, there are several institutes and companies working on the topic. So it's not sufficient usually that there's 1 or 2 institutes having an idea and say, well, this could be an interesting topic. You need a broader a backbone, so to say, of activities spread globally that we see there's really an advanced step necessary. There's already a lot of activities, and now bringing these activities together, combining that, will be accelerating the development of the technology section. So if you have new ideas or you discover new problems, find peers in other countries and bring that to a level that if you say for yourself, we would need now the support and or how to say that, to the support and also the visibility of IEA by the backing of the official country representatives, then that is a good start to contact us and start talking how that could become a task, and try to figure out what could be the best priority area, and talk to that vice chair or LT member who's in charge of that sub topic. This is something that has been shown at this conference many times, and since its publication, I'd say there hasn't been a single wind energy event on strategy I've been participating in where this paper has not been mentioned or shown. It is going back to the IEA Windled Initiative, where more than 70 experts gathered in the US for, if I remember correctly, it was a 3-day workshop, really working on these ideas. What are the grand visions? What are challenges ahead of us that are beyond usually 4 or 5 years programs that will be have to tackle in wind energy science, and that led to a lengthy report that then was condensed in a shorter paper that has been published in Science. And really kudos to Paul, Catherine, and Eric for driving this initiative. It really reached great visibility. We use it a lot to convince people why wind energy science is something that is still needed and why this is so important. You know all these pictures, and here's some sort of communication that these are words from Catherine. If you have to translate the challenges maybe into easier words, and it's understanding wind from global to local scales, handling dynamic and design of skyscraper-sized machines on land and offshore, and supporting electricity and energy systems operation and reliability from the near term to long term. That is an activity that is luckily going on. So the main paper obviously has been published in 2019, and now it's the next task to develop the different sub challenges in there in more detail in in-depth papers. That is an activity that Catherine is driving. EERA JP Wind is involved, SETWind, the academies and other communities. So I really appreciate that. And if you're not involved in that exercise now and you're interested, please get in contact with the authors, and Catherine will be happy to help you, because I think the impact these papers have are phenomenal, and it really is worth to spend the hours and resources working on that. This afternoon, there's also a panel debate where this paper and the outcome and what critical partnerships are necessary, organized by the US. So if you have free time this afternoon, that would be 4 p.m. European time. Tune in. You're welcome to listen to the discussion with the DOE and GE. I have the pleasure to discuss on these topics as well. So back to how do topics evolve and what is the motivation behind wind energy research. If you read these titles, environmental and meteorological aspects of wind energy conversion systems, evaluation of models for wind energy siting, integration of wind power into national electricity supply systems, and investigation of rotor stressing and smoothness of operation of large-scale wind energy conversion system. And I would ask you, where do they fit? What are these titles or work programs in Horizon Europe 2020 or 23? If there's actual activities in some of the national programs, my guess would be that at least you would not say, no, that is nonsense, these topics that have nothing to do with our activities today. Actually, these are the titles of the first 4 annexes in IEA Wind in 1978. So the wording seems very familiar to us, although these topics are 40 years, more than 40 years old already. On the right side, you can see which countries participated in these tasks at that time. And it is interesting to read also the entities, because at that time was, if you look at, for instance, at Norway, it's Institute for Nuclear Energy, and also in Germany, the participant in IEA Wind was the Nuclear Research Center. So obviously a very different world, but already they recognize these are important topics. Why do I mention that? Why is that still important? Because sometimes there's discussion. We have been working on a topic for so long and so many years. It must be done by now. So there's no further need to work on that. And I think the problem is, and that is getting back to communication, really how we jointly together send our messages. The technology and the challenges evolve. Wind turbines, I don't have to explain that in this forum, they look very much alike. If you look at the general concept, just by the look of a turbine from the 70s or the modern ones. Or 3-bladed, horizontal axis, and so on and so on. But of course, as we all know, these are very, very different machines when it comes to material, how we build them, design them, operate them, dismantle them, recycle them. All that is a completely different world nowadays. And I guess nobody on a political decision-making level would argue with that. When it comes to R&D topics, they have evolved. As such, they live with the technology, so they also change. And I think the issue here is that we always are forced to compress ever complex scientific challenges and degrees of details into short, simple headlines and messages that are easy to read and to have in bullet point papers for decision-making parties. And that is probably the issue. That is something we also have to work on, how we really communicate these topics will live with the technology as it develops. And it may sound to the uneducated ear like this is something we have been doing forever, but we have to keep explaining. If you look inside, it's complete brand new what we are doing and really challenging. And this is something we all have to do together, and keep on doing, communicate that our scientific challenges are developing as the technology itself is. That is because I've shown the cutoff of the old annual report. That's also to remind you, all these reports are available, and all the on the left side you see some covers of IEA Wind annual reports over the years. Obviously, very different taste in design and colors over the decades. But it's a great source and probably the most detailed source of the memory of wind technology development. So these reports are for free. You find all the information about research funding, what topics have been addressed over the years, who participated, all the developments. So have a look if you want to learn something about the history of our technology, but also if you need to find good arguments, how topics develop and what's new and compared to previous activities. I also recommend, of course, our recommended practices. These are pre-standards agreed on by the participating experts in the field when developing these documents, that very often are then picked up by other agencies or organizations like IEC to develop then full standards. And then, of course, any reports we provide on topics which are on the website, I recommend to read that. There's great information and great condensed expert knowledge in these reports. So why to get involved with us? I think if from a perspective at the different organizations we have in wind energy, it really is a unique forum for research, industry, sponsor organizations, and government. And the later ones, this is really making the difference between research settings that are driven by the researcher themselves. It is a recognized and trusted body for pre-standards and best practices. The activities are not driven by funding. You can't apply at IEA Wind and say, I need money. It's only vice versa. You have to bring resources to participate. So everybody who's participating is doing that for the interest of collaboration and sharing information. And that is giving a different vibe and attitude. It's not that the strategy is to design funding programs. It really is, there is a challenge and we have to work on that, and let's do that together. It is an existing framework for global cooperation that for all the European partners that might probably not sound so important, but if you're not a member of the European Union, or if you're outside Europe and the US, you want to cooperate with us or with the US colleagues, or from Asia to Mexico, sometimes you need a legal framework for simple collaboration things to start. And their IEA Wind is great because all these member countries already have this contracted agreement how to exchange knowledge, scientists. That helps a lot. It is quite formal and seems to be complex at the time, but it's also flexible. So if there's a task already running and your country is a member of IEA Wind, you can join that task also on the run. But you can also leave it on the run. So in that way, it is a flexible structure. So don't be shy to ask if you're interested in participating in some activities. How can you get involved? And then I think another topic where we all have to learn how to do that, as EERA is also interested in stimulating cross-joint program activities, bringing the different technologies together. That is also an agenda by IEA Paris from the headquarters. How can we better use the knowledge in the different technology collaboration programs jointly? How can they cooperate? And for the wind TCP, the first neighboring TCPs we are talking to at the moment, that is obviously ocean energy, the hydrogen, but also the superconductivity for advanced technologies. So I'm really eager to learn from EERA as well. Are there best practices that work, how you can bridge the different technologies and sub-programs? And is there something we can learn from EERA and implement that in joint activities for our TCP? And with that, I'm at the end. I thank you for your attention. If you want to get in contact, please go to the IEA Wind website. You'll find all the contact information there. You can always reach out to the Secretariat, to Ignacio Marti and the colleagues at DTU for that. And if you want to reach me directly, just you know my email address, contact me, and looking forward for feedback and questions.
So Stephan, thank you very much for this, I would say, great overview of what the IEA Task Wind is entailing, is doing, its structure, its intentions, the way of collaboration with others, and well, it is very wide. It entails a large part of the world. All countries are potentially part of it. So I understand you took a little bit more time than just 15 minutes, but it was really worth to listen to it. And before I am going to into questions, I want to see are there questions in the room here in Amsterdam? I see Arno van Wingerden, and we wait for the microphone.
Yes.
Arno.
Okay. Morning, Stephan, and thanks for a very interesting presentation and very good overview of the IEA activities. The one thing that struck me on a personal note was the strategy from 1978, that you could, kind of gift wrap, maybe add a few modern buzzwords to it, and then shovel it direction EU Commission. It's very much like you said. I mean, although the issues, the wind turbines, are very different, the necessity of compressing this into three catchy headlines makes it sound very much the same for such a long period. So that was just a remark that, yeah, you showed it, I noticed it too. But my question is actually a different one. You mentioned the IEA publications giving a unique overview of the wind energy. Is there also such a thing as an index? For instance, can I find all the dual misalignment topics ever published in any report by IEA Wind?
No, that's not part of the annual report. That the country chapters are really giving information what the amount of R&D activities in the member countries have been that year, the amount of resources, the topics that they have been involved in, and then the tasks that they have been involved in. And then the more technical information, this is in the task chapters in each annual report. But the tables and indexes, this is more on what have been the capacity factors, how many, what amount of wind turbines and sizes have been installed, the amount of electricity coming out. But the things like yaw misalignment or rotor blade materials used, that's not part of the report, at least up to now.
Okay, but then for the technical reports, I mean, the major thing is that if you haven't been involved in these task groups, it's really difficult to come up to easily figure out the reports, and especially if it's in a task, if it's in a topic that's not particularly officially taken up by a task group, because then you simply go to that task group, then it's still a bit of a job to actually dig through all the information.
It is, that is true. But as you said, it's hard to gather all that information in a consistent way. And at least we can provide some numbers in a consistent way for several decades now. But if there's a need from the sector saying, well, that would be great figures that to be implemented or included in the annual reports, then give that information to us, because via the EXCO, we can then try to bring that to the different countries so that they collect these numbers and that we can include that in formal reports, in future reports.
No.
Okay, thanks.
And I can only say that I really enjoy browsing through these reports as well. It is like, there is indeed not an index, so it is the quick searching is maybe difficult, but it gives such an interesting overview of what has been happening since 78 already on a country-specific level. So that's perfect.
And if I just may add, so we scanned all the old versions, so the old paper version. Every report is available as a PDF file. So if you want to get your hand on that, just contact the secretary, and we can provide these reports to you.
Then, if I look in the room, are there other questions? Stephan, let's go back to the de-siloing, as it is also sometimes called, or the cross-program activities. Indeed, within within EERA, we are also working on that, because this is really something appreciated by the EU and national governments. So I can really see that the same would apply for the IEA. And it would be worthwhile to have a discussion on that. So that's an open hand that I like to take.
That is probably also a good idea, to have a small workshop or working group, or we have a chat with our secretariat and then the management board to gather ideas how to do that in the best way. Because it's obviously, you can always invite people from the other sub-program or TCP to your own meetings and listen to the activities, but the challenge really is to get the scientists and really doing the groundwork in the sub-programs or in the task to talk and to collaborate with the scientists in the other technologies. And how to do that, as I said, everybody agrees that is important, that we do that. How to do that in an effective way, that is something we still have to figure out all together.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Stephan. I'd really like to thank you again.
Thank you. And see you next time.